Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellowship. My name is Kyle. Today, we're going to be covering the Detroit Lions, looking at their team depth chart. We'll look at the draft class. We'll look at the notable free agents that they gained and that they lost, and we'll kind of just paint the picture as to who we're going to be relying on for fantasy football with the Detroit Lions this season. So there's a lot of turnover on this team, a lot of new pieces, a lot of new coaches, a lot of new faces, a new quarterback, a lot of new things. So it's kind of hard to project this team, but we'll start with the head coach here, Dan Campbell, former tight end of the Detroit Lions. Actually, that was pretty cool. I'm going to pull up actually his Wikipedia page, and I'll kind of show you guys where he's been as of late. So he did play for the Giants, the Cowboys, the Lions, and the Saints. He was the Dolphins intern head coach in 2010, Dolphins tight end coach from 2011 to 2015, the Dolphins interim head coach in 2015, and then he was the New Orleans Saints assistant head coach and tight ends coach for the last 4 or 5 seasons, and now he's the head coach in Detroit. So I really like this. You know, he's a really strong candidate to be a head coach. He's been with the Saints and Drew Brees and Sean Payton the last handful of seasons. He got some interim head coach, sample duty there in 2015. He also was the tight ends coach for Miami. So a lot of good work with Miami and a lot of good work with New Orleans. We should see a little bit more tougher attitude, I think, out of the Detroit Lions. And then the one part here that I do like for the offense is Anthony Lynn. I know he kind of struggled last year with the Chargers. Actually, the last few seasons, he kind of struggled with the Chargers. But he finally, with Justin Herbert, they had some really good things happen last year. It just seems like Anthony Lynn's going to be a guy that is not going to help us out for fantasy. If you remember, he was the head coach from 2017 to 2020. He was with the Buffalo Bills for a handful of years. Or 2 years, it looks like, assistant head coach and running backs coach, interim head coach, offensive coordinator, handful of seasons with the Jets, 2009 to 2014. He's been with the Cleveland Browns, the Dallas Cowboys, the Jacksonville Jaguars. So he's been in coaching ranks for a while. He's 52 years old. He's got a running backs background. So we should expect more focus on the running back game here. And we should see him really try to help Jared Goff. As we saw with the Rams, a good running game was Jared Goff's best friend. So I'm super excited about the offense in Detroit actually this year. There's not a lot of big names, but we kind of know who and where to go. So let's look at we'll get to the depth chart in just a second. I just want to show you guys, and then we'll cover the draft, but I just want to show you guys who's gone and who's been added. So notable departures, of course, Matthew Stafford, Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones, Jamal Agnew, Matt Prater, Gerard Davis, Justin Coleman. Some huge names have been subtracted from this Detroit Lions team, a team that only won 5 games last year. So this is very troublesome. Stafford was replaced with Jared Goff. They added Jamal Williams. They added Tyro Williams and Brashad Perriman at the receivers position. Tim Boyle has been added as the backup quarterback, and Alex Anzalone from the linebacking there. So there's a lot of moving pieces here, but I kind of like the additions. I know Jared Goff's not a big name that we like in fantasy football, but he's going to be serviceable for them. They got a good return on Matt Stafford. They have a lot of first-round draft picks coming, and he should be enough to get them a solid rebuild for the next couple seasons. I really like the Jamal Williams sign. We're going to look at that in a little bit. And then Tyro Williams, Brashad Perriman, those guys are both really good when they're on the field. They just have trouble staying healthy. So they did kind of help. At least they put a Band-Aid on losing Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones. I'm not comparing the two, but they got a couple decent veteran players there. So let's look at the draft class real quick. Of course, at number 7th overall, they got Penei Sewell out of Oregon. He fell all the way to 7, so I think Detroit was very happy with this. They come back round 2. Defensive tackle Levi Onwuzurike out of Washington. Another defensive tackle here, Alim McNeil, NC State. Ifeatu Melifonwu out of Syracuse. Cornerback here. A lot of people are excited about Amon-Ra St. Brown out of USC. He might be one of their leading pass catchers this season. Linebacker Derek Barnes out of Purdue. Jamar Jefferson, Oregon State. So I really like the offensive additions here. St. Brown and Jamar Jefferson at the back of the draft. And then a bunch of defensive players with hard names to pronounce in the middle here. And then Penei Sewell as well. So it's a really, really strong draft class. I really like what Detroit was able to do. And again, adding Jared Goff, Jamal Williams, Tyro Williams, Brashad Perriman, they should be functional this year. I think the majority of the work is going to be on the defensive side of the ball. So we'll see if Onwuzurike and McNeil can help, plug up the middle for these guys. And they still have a lot of young talent on that defense that's going to get a little bit better this season. So let's move up here to the important depth chart. So if it's in blue, that's been drafted. If it's green, it's a UDFA. So Jared Goff, of course, is the starting quarterback. They added Tim Boyle, and David Blau is still hanging around. Now Jared Goff losing Matt Stafford is very tough, but what they were able to get for Matt Stafford should help this team turn things around. Jared Goff, we didn't really expect the Lions to win much anyways. If we look at the last few seasons with Matt Stafford, this team, the last 3 seasons, they've only won 14 games, 5, 3, and 6. Back with Jim Caldwell was their most successful season at 9 and 7. So Matt Patricia really set things back for Detroit the last few seasons, double-digit losses in 3 straight years. So we don't really have that much expectations for the Detroit Lions this year, but winning again 5 or 6 games, basically if they could duplicate what they did last year, that would be viewed as a success, I think. So I think it's a really strong case that they could win 5 or 6 games this year with Jared Goff at quarterback. As far as projections right now, I have Jared Goff throwing for a little over 4,000 yards, 23 touchdowns, 10 picks, 45 rushing attempts, 125 yards, and 2 touchdowns. If we look at what he's done in LA the last few seasons, last year, he struggled a little bit last year. They didn't really have everybody healthy on the running game. It was kind of a weird season in LA, but almost 4,000 yards, 20 passing touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 51 attempts, 99 yards, and 4 rushing TDs. So he played okay. He was just very sporadic. And again, the absence of Todd Gurley really hurt this team. But Cam Akers kind of came on strong towards the end, and they really relied on that running game and helped them get into the playoffs and further a couple games into the playoffs. So I like what Goff did last year. Of course, the year before that, he had that big season, 4,600 yards, 22 TDs. And then the year before that, another 4,600 yards, 32 TDs. So I'm open to Jared Goff being decent. He's nothing more than a quarterback 2, though, in Superflex leagues. The running backs, Deandre Swift is the starter. Jamal Williams is the number 2. We'll get to that in a second, though. They did snag Jamar Jefferson, who I like quite a bit, in the 7th round, and they added Raheem Boyd and Dedrick Mills. I kind of forgot to mention, I should update this, but they did release Kerryon Johnson. So this is all about Swift. It's all about Jamal Williams, and then getting Jamar Jefferson some run as their 7th round pick. But before I talk about DeAndre Swift, I just want to read some notes here. This is from offensive coordinator Anthony Lynn. He's calling Jamal Williams an A-back, and here's what it means for DeAndre Swift. So here's the actual quote. Jamal Williams is what I'd call a classic A-back. I like to break the backs down into A and B. My A-backs are normally my bigger backs. They can run between the tackles, block probably a little bit better than a B-back, and they can also run the perimeter. I can leave those guys in there for all 3 downs. So Jamal Williams, being a Packer fan, and watching Jamal Williams the last 4 seasons, he is a really good running back. He's not going to wow you with his speed, but everything about him, you love him as a player, as a person. His personality is one of the brightest on the Packers team the last few seasons. People love being around Jamal Williams. You can see how happy he is in pregame and press conferences. He's just a generally really happy dude. So that his positive attitude is going to sink into this Detroit Lions team. And then on top of that, like, he's one of the better pass protecting backs, a really good pass catching back as well. And he's a solid runner. He's gonna bang it in between the tackles, which I think he might be a little bit better DeAndre Swift in between the tackles. So DeAndre Swift, as much as we love DeAndre Swift, I think Jamal Williams is going to be kind of pesky they're kind of going to probably be on the field almost the same amount this year. So I love DeAndre Swift. He is listed as the starter, but for me, he's just a running back 2 this season. I don't know if we're ready to give him the full workload that people might be hoping for. So if I'm going to spend a draft pick on DeAndre Swift, I'll do it until round 3. If I'm honest, I'm probably looking for Jamal Williams, and especially in best ball leagues. Best ball and PPR leagues, that's where I'd be interested in adding Jamal Williams. The guy to keep an eye on, though, is Jamar Jefferson. We'll see what he does in the preseason. But a good group of backs here. We're going to see Swift, Jamal Williams, and Jamar Jefferson sprinkled in throughout. Jason Cabinda fullback, Nick Bawden fullback. Now, what do we do with the receiving group here? Brashad Perriman, Tyro Williams, Quintez Cephas, and then amon-ra St. Brown. I'm pretty sure that this is the 4 receiving group that we're going to be using or looking at all season. I really can't recommend drafting any of these guys for redraft this season, but I'm very interested because Jared Goff, he's got there's some similarities to what he's thrown to in the past. Now you got Tyro Williams, Brashad Perriman. Those guys are kind of more out receivers. You can kind of liken those to the Samuel when he was in L. Guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown, he would probably compare best to a Cooper Kupp or a Robert Woods. I actually think Amon-Ra St. Brown as a rookie might be the best receiving option of this team. So for me, I'm not interested in any of these wide receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown's a really fun second round dynasty pick. Cephas, I'm still holding on to dynasty leagues. And then Tyro Williams and Brashad Perriman. I like both. Struggle to stay healthy. Brashad Perriman could be, a mini Kenny Golladay replacement downfield. So we'll watch that. But I think I'm staying away from the Lions receivers in redraft. They still have, they added Khalif Raymond, Victor Bolden Jr., Tom Kennedy, Damian Ratley, a couple UDFAs, Jonathan Adams Jr., Javon McKinley, and Sage Surratt. They still have Geronimo Allison and John Atkins there as well. So it's a lot of junk here at the end of the receiver room. So it's pretty much these four guys are the ones we need to know. Now, the one guy that I feel the most confident in drafting this season on the Detroit Lions, it's TJ Hawkinson. You could pay a 5th or 6th round pick. He's a lock for tight end. He's probably, all the questions at receiver, he's going to lead this team in targets, and Jared Goff has shown some success with the tight end. So I do love TJ Hawkinson as a top 5 tight end this year. You can take him in the 5th, 6th round, wherever you can, whenever you can snag him there. They have Darren Fells, who they added in free agency, Elise Mack, Brock Wright, Hunter Thedford, and Jake Hausman. So it's all about Hawkinson. If you are interested in drafting Detroit Lions, he's the one guy that I think I would, give the stamp of approval on. We'll monitor the Lions receivers. I'm just not excited about getting one of these guys in. I could see Brashad Perriman having a handful of touchdowns, Amon-Ra St. Brown having a good PPR game every now and then, but it's all about Hawkinson. Deandre Swift, you got to be patient. He's going to be an RB2 this year. I feel pretty good about that. But Jamal Williams is going to be pesky, so make sure you're drafting him in best ball leagues. And then again, Jared Goff, I'm going to use him as a QB2 in Superflex leagues. We just expect them to have to throw the ball kind of a lot. So before we end the video, though, I want to show you guys just where I have these guys projected. So Deandre Swift and Jamal Williams. I have Deandre Swift, 165 total carries, almost 800 yards, 6 touchdowns. He's got 46 catches and 345 yards for 2 touchdowns. So that's 203 PPR points. Last year he had 189. So he's technically, kind of where he was last year. Deandre Swift was RB16 in PPR league. So I still have him as a, like a top 20 back for sure. It just really depends on how much Jamal Williams eats into that receiving workload, because they didn't really have that back last year. They still had AP, they still had Kerryon Johnson, but Jamal Williams, I think at this point of the careers, is a much better receiving option than both of those guys. So for Williams, I have him at 120 carries, 525 yards, and 7 TDs, 34 catches, 235 yards, and a touchdown. So that's 158 points. That would have put Jamal Williams as a RB31. So he's going to be useful for random weeks. If anything happens to DeAndre Swift, we're all going to rush to the waiver wire to get Jamal Williams. So I love the running backs here. And then look at the receivers real quick. The top 4 receivers. So Brashad Perriman, I don't know. I penciled him in almost 900 yards and 4 touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 58 catches, 655 yards, and 4 TDs. I'm probably going to have to update that a little bit. I want to bump Amon-Ra St. Brown's numbers up just a tad. Tyro Williams, Quintez Cephas, not much for fantasy either. But again, it's all about Hawkinson, almost 800 yards and 7 TDs, 72 catches. So be very careful when drafting your Detroit Lions. The only guy I can for sure say go get is TJ Hawkinson. So I think that's going to do it for this video. I'm going to be done recording videos for the evening. So we'll come back and record the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings tomorrow. But I don't know. Thank you guys for your time. We'll see you tomorrow. Peace.